Hi everyone, my name is Satyam Raha, and in this video I'm going to talk about the interfaces in Java. Basically this video will be about the theoretical background which you need to understand. Okay, so you may like to take a note of it, right? And in the next video I'll be talking about I'll practically implement the interfaces with different examples to better understand it, right? So in this video, basically it is theory and it is very much required, right? Do not go to the next video before you have actually understood the base of interface, what interface is and how does it work, right? So let's start. So you see, interfaces in Java are just like classes. Okay, it is a block of code which you know can have methods and variables just like class, but the difference is that all the methods must be or is abstract by default. Okay, so you need not mention the keyword abstract. It will be uh, I think it was reflecting, right? Okay, so you see, all the methods in an interface are basically made as abstract. You need not mention it. That means you cannot have the body definition in an interface. Okay. So what about the variables? All the variables in an interface are by default final and static, and they must be initialized, right? So what I mean by all these things, what is it used for? So whenever you define an interface, you define it so that some other class can implement that interface. What I mean by that is, for example, uh, Java doesn't support multiple inheritance, right? Now, how do I actually implement that, right? Multiple inheritance problem, how do I solve it? So you can see, I'll just show a small example. Uh, say an interface is defined like this. Okay, say interface demo like this. Okay, so I can have anything inside it. Now a class, how do a class implement it? So a class can implement it like this. Say class A, we already know how to extend a class, right? Like this extends, say B, we used to write it, right? It is inheritance. But what about in interfaces? We can implement an interface like this. Sorry, implements, extends, right? Demo, and then we can write it like this. Okay, now what happens is all the properties of the interface actually gets inherited in the class A. Inheritance should not be actually used here. The word inheritance is wrong to use in case of interface, but you can understand all the properties of that interface are available to class A here. Okay, let's say now I have some method, say void show, for example. So I cannot implement it as you know it, right? I cannot write the body because this is abstract by default. I need not mention it, but it is abstract by default. So this is an error. So I cannot write it like this. What I can do rather is I can simply write the function like this. Okay, fine. Now there is an error which is evolving in class A. The error is, since the method show in the interface demo is abstract by default, so any class which implements demo must implement all the methods in the interface. That means the show method has to be implemented in class A. So if I'll have to write it like this, okay, so I'll have to write something like this. Let's say system out. Let's say I am sorry. Let's say it's not a show, for example, right? But still there is an error. The error evolves because all the methods which are being implemented in a class should be made as public. Okay, so this has to be made as public, because you see the reason is here void show by default is public. Okay, and when I do not write public here, what it means is I'm actually reducing the visibility, reducing the scope or visibility of that particular method, which is not allowed. It will not be accessible, right? So here you can see the error, cannot reduce the visibility of the inherited method from demo. That is why I must make it as public. So always remember, any class which implements a method must have the method as public. Okay, while implementing it, you need not write public here. You need not write public here. This is useless. Okay, by default it is public, so you need not write it here. But when implementing it, you must provide the public keyword here. Okay. Okay. The next thing is, you see, let's say I have another interface, for example, interface, say name maybe. Okay, let's say it has some void display maybe. Okay, sorry, I cannot implement it here. So like this. Now you see, unlike the inheritance where multiple inheritance was not allowed, here I can implement as many interfaces as I want. When I write this, what happens is all the properties of all the interfaces which I have written here using a comma will get or will be available to class A or will be applied to class A. Okay, so multiple inheritance problem is solved here. Okay, why did multiple inheritance problem actually occurred? Did you understand that? Because you see, maybe like two different uh, two different parent classes were there, and the child class was inheriting from the two parent class, right? Now the properties here and here, the parent classes might be same, right? Say for example, in a parent class A, I had a method called show, and in the parent class B, maybe I had another method which is also show. Now when inheriting, when the child is inheriting the properties, extends maybe AB, if this was allowed in Java, then what would have happened? Which version of show would be inherited to the child class? That was the question, isn't it? So that is why multiple inheritance was not available or was a problem in Java, or is the problem in Java, right? But this was solved in interfaces. How? By making the methods here as abstract. Now two interfaces can have the same method name, no issue. It will have show, it will have show, while I'm implementing, so both the properties are available to the class which implements it. But I have not provided a definition, so which version is to be used is not a problem here, because the names are same, right? And the names are only here. I will implement it here in the class, isn't it? So there is no implementation, there is only body. For example, let's say I have some method show here. Say, let's delete the display. Let's say I have show. So both these interfaces have show method. Okay, and I am implementing both the interfaces. So class A will actually have all the two properties, show from demo, show from name, right? But it is not a problem in case of interface, because I have not implemented the show method in any of the interfaces and it is not allowed. That is why the name itself is not a problem, right? Name itself is not a problem, but the property or the body of that method when defined was a problem when it came to multiple inheritance. Okay, since we are not providing the body here, so in the interface, that is why it is not a problem. The names are already only coming. It is only making sure that all the class which implements these interfaces must implement a show method. That's it. Okay, it is only ensuring that class A should have a show method. Now which show or this show, doesn't matter, both are show, right? It doesn't matter, but show should be here. That is what is the main thing. Okay, I hope you understand how multiple inheritance problem is solved with interfaces in Java, right? Now the question is, let's say I have another method here which is display. Now there is an error. Now what is the error? Error is that we are implementing demo and name, right, together. So all the methods collectively should be implemented here. I have not implemented display. That is why the error. So I must write display also here, right? Sorry, public void display. Understood? So this is how an interface works. So you can have as many interfaces implemented as you want using a comma. Okay. And how does the extend work? Let's say there is a class called parent, maybe. So just the syntax is like this: class A extends parent, sorry, and implements demo name, like this. So you can only extend one class but implement any number of interfaces, right? So this is the actual syntax. So you can, maybe this is optional if you do not want to implement anything, or this is optional, right, if you do not want to have any extension of a class, right? So this is how it works. One more thing is, an interface can also extend another interface. That is, let's say this interface name extends the demo, for example. So this also works, right? But when I extend demo, all the properties from show, from demo is actually, let's say I do not have demo here, I only implemented name, right? Now display and show is present here. Let's say I have another method, for example, let's say print. Now this is an error, because you see, although I'm implementing name here, but class A will have the inherited properties also. Here I'm inheriting from demo, right? This interface name is inheriting from demo. That means all the properties of demo are available here, and by extension this is also has to be implemented here also, right? So I must implement print also here, like this: public void print. Okay, so in the hierarchy chain, all the methods should be implemented. That is what is important, right? Okay, so let's delete the class parent. I do not want it. Let's not have these also. I do not require these. Let's say I do not have name, I have only show. Sorry, I'm only implementing demo. Okay, and yeah, right. Now you see, for example, now I have something like I cannot okay, before that let's talk about the variables first. So variables can be you cannot have a variable like this, because all the variables in an interface by default are static, they are final, and they must be initialized. Okay, so uninitialized variables are not allowed, so I must have some initialization, right? And these are final and static by default. That means this value is only specific to this interface, this is not specific to any objects, first. And the second thing is, this is final. That means you cannot reassign it. For example, in print, I cannot like change this value. Sorry, I cannot change this value. Okay, so this A is static A and this is final A. So I cannot change the value of A. I can only use it maybe like this: B equals to A plus 8 maybe. This is allowed, this is fine. So I can use the value, but I cannot reinitialize it, right? So this is one thing. The next thing is, I do not instantiate an interface. We cannot instantiate an interface. Okay, just like the abstract classes. What we can do is, we implement, or we actually instantiate the objects of a class which implements an interface. That is, we create objects of class A rather than creating objects of demo, right? Demo is an interface, we cannot instantiate it, we cannot create objects. But class A, which is implementing the interface demo, I can create objects of that class. So I can write like this. For example, let's say, so it is demo. So I can use the reference variable, right? I can use the reference variable D. So new and A, right? So this works. Now I can call any method. Say I want to call show. It's fine. So if I execute this code, you can check it's not a show. Yeah, it's printed, right? So it works fine. But there is a problem. Okay, before the problem, I think I forgot to explain. Uh, maybe I have explained already. Still, I'll just reiterate in case I forgot. So the difference between an abstract class and an interface. So in abstract class, what happens is, you can have non-abstract methods also, right? You can have non-abstract methods also. But in case of interface, we can have only abstract methods. Now there is a star mark here. This is what I am talking about, is the traditional definition of interface. There were some updates in Java 8, and I'll talk about it in the later part. But right now, what I'm talking about is the traditional definition of interface. That is, we cannot have non-abstract methods in an interface. Okay, but in case of abstract classes, we could have non-abstract classes along with abstract classes, if you remember that, right? So this is the basic difference between abstract class and an interface, right? And moreover, all the variables here are mandatorily made final, static, and must be initialized, and that was not the case with abstract class. So this is what you must remember. And the next point which I need to explain is, you see here, int a equals to 9. Okay, fine, this works fine, very good. So demo d equals to new a. So we are using the reference of the interface, that is the parent interface, and we are referring to the object of the class, right? Implementer class. And we are using a d, that is the reference of the interface, to call the method show, right? But you see, is it mandatory to have, like, it is mandatory, is it mandatory that we can have only the methods, we can implement only the methods which are there in the interface? It's not mandatory actually. So we can have as many methods as we want in my implementer class. So here by default, void print and show must be defined, right? It must be defined, but I can have as many extra methods as I want. It's not a problem, right? So public void display is a method which is very specific to class A, which is personal to class A. It is not there in the interface demo, right? So I can have such methods, right? Let's say I want to print something here, say displaying something, maybe. Okay, of typo, something, right? So you see, if I call this method, if I want to call this method, how do I call this method? So can I call this method with d? Think about it. So d is a reference of the interface, right? So if I call the method display with d, will it be possible? It turns out that it is not possible. The reason being, the obvious reason, I think you got it right. Obvious reason is, demo has no idea about the personal methods which are present only in class A. Demo is aware of only show method, print method, and the variable A which is assigned 9, right? But it has no idea about the display method or any method which is specific to class A, isn't it? So that is why here we are trying to access display with a reference variable D which is referring to the interface and not the class. So in order to make it possible, we simply need to change the reference. Now it is possible. Here D is a reference of the class A, right? And class A knows the display method, so it is not a problem. Okay, but normally what we do is we use the reference of the interface rather than the reference of the object. Okay, it is from the concept of dynamic method dispatch, if I am not wrong. So you can watch that video to clarify that, right? So yeah, so this is it is possible like this, right? And d dot display, yes. And it is happening because demo has no idea about the special properties or specific properties of class A, but class A has all the ideas or all the properties which the interface demo has, because class A is implementing demo and interface demo is not implementing class or something like that, right? And it is not possible although, but it is not likewise, right? The opposite is not true. So that is why class A has all the information, but demo doesn't have all the information which class A has. That is why the problem. So I think that's it. Okay, one more thing is, you see here the interface can be made as public. Okay, so it can be made as public, and if I do not mention any specifier, it is default. Okay, so public and default are the valid specifiers for an interface. You see, we cannot write private interface like this. This is an error. Okay, you can check the error, read it. Illegal modifier for the interface demo. Okay, it is not allowed. The next thing is, can I write public here? Still there is error. I said public is allowed, right? But still there is error. What is the error? You see, public demo, a public interface must always be defined in its own file. That means, what is the file name of this file? It is exception demo.java, right? But when I make an interface as public, that particular interface should be saved in a file named demo.java. That is what I mean. So public interfaces must be defined in its own file. You can see the error here. Okay, so this is one thing. Yeah, so let's not make it public. And I think I got all the things. Yeah, and I think you got the basic like syntax of using an interface, right? Class A extends some another class, right? And implements any number of interfaces using comma, right? This is like this. You can have any number of interfaces like this, valid interfaces, right? So this is how you can write the interfaces. In the next video, I'll first talk about, okay, let's talk about okay, let's talk about that in the next video. I'll talk about the updates which were included in Java 8, from Java 8 and from Java 9, I guess. So some updates were there. There were some updates like default methods, some private methods, some static methods. So it was allowed in interface, and I'll talk about that in the next video, and then I will show the practically some, maybe some example. Although I have already shown some examples to demonstrate it, still I'll use some more examples. Okay, so thank you.